man, the myth, the legend, with a haircut.
I was invited to do this as I heard the invitation when everybody else did. I listened
Okay.
to the episode yesterday in the car.
Good. Back by popular demand is Keaton Weiss from Due Dissidence. We had a question yesterday about, various things, but one was Kshama Sawant in Seattle. I learned during the course of this episode to say Kshama Sawant and not Kshama Sawant. So I have a statement I'd like to read, and then we can launch right into it.
Sure thing.
Alrighty, and welcome, by the way.
Oh, thank you, as always.
Yeah, it's great to see you. And I love your new haircut.
Thank you. My wife gave it to me, actually.
You like mine?
Yeah, I know. I said, well, I couldn't get her to go that far. She said, I'll go as low as 2 on the buzzer, and that's it.
All right. Well, over time, maybe she'll change her mind. If your migration is similar to mine, she might.
That's the thing. Yeah, it all depends on that.
All right. The best way to push Biden to the left is not to vote for him, right or wrong. The best way to move corporatists through the electoral system outside of strikes and riots that include property damage is when a leftist, independent or otherwise, mounts a credible challenge. If the leftist wins, as Kshama Sawant did in Seattle, then the Overton window not only stops its inexorable motion to the right, it actually starts to move back toward the left. Voting for Biden, as Bernie tells us to do, keeps the window moving right. We leftists need to mount a credible strike/riot threat as well as a credible electoral threat. Advice such as Noam Chomsky offers to minimize the importance of mounting the electoral threat seems misinformed at best and shady/nefarious at worst. What do you think?
Not bad. Yeah, I don't have much of a counter argument to that. It's funny. I was reading an article by Megan Day at Jacobin that came out just after Biden chose Kamala, and the sub headline was that really despite the quote unquote pressure campaigns by Bernie of these last 2 years, despite all the progress that the left thought they were making within the Democratic Party, he chose Kamala Harris anyway. And the Democratic establishment wanted Kamala Harris from the beginning anyway. That was obvious. And
Wall Street loves Kamala.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, the Democratic establishment is basically just an extension of that community, if you want to call them that.
Community.
And so, I mean, look, I don't have much of a retort to that. I don't. Like I said, I don't feel comfortable telling people how or how not to vote, but at the same time, I also don't have any patience for this fantasy that you can vote for Biden and then push him to the left. There is no pushing Joe Biden or the Democrats anywhere. You can, as I've said before on my show and on your show, you can exert some pressure on the system itself. And then it becomes a question of who do you think is likely to bend first? And, I've heard arguments that Trump is more likely to bend than Biden is, because of the sort of transfer of power from capital to labor that a program like Medicare for All has. A Wall Street party is just not going to go for that, no matter what. Now, the thing is, it's not that the Republicans are not also a Wall Street party, right? So this, to me, I mean, I don't know, but that's really tough to say, and you're in a very miserable position to even be having to weigh those two things, right? But yeah, look, I mean, I think the point of the article that you recommended I read and that I come on here and talk about is a very good one, which is the way to utilize electoral politics is with candidates like Kshama Sawant. Not candidates like Bernie Sanders. Now, here's the thing. I mean, Bernie was a very rare example to begin with. Like, you can't really model other campaigns based on the Bernie campaign in the sense that you had a real chance due to a number of factors to actually take over this Democratic Party. We almost did. We were set up to. We were 24 hours away. And then they reshuffled the deck in Joe Biden's favor, 24 hours before Super Tuesday. But Bernie, is an independent of sorts. Joe Brunoli, a great writer who started sending stuff to our site, had a great article about how Bernie is not as independent as it seems. He's been able to function as an independent senator in Vermont largely because of his acquiescence to the Democrats at key points, right? I mean, think about it. Why don't they challenge him? Right? Why don't they run a Democrat against him in Vermont? It's because he agrees to caucus with them. And even though, they would certainly rather a Republican be president than Bernie Sanders, they can live with this independent senator from a small state like Vermont. They'd rather have that than split the progressive vote and let the Republican win, right? So they kind of play ball with him as a senator.
Whoa, wait just a second. Are you talking about DNC politicians? Are you talking about established Democrats would rather have Bernie than Trump?
No. I'm saying they'd rather have Trump than Bernie at the presidential level.
Right.
But I'm saying if he's a senator and he's willing to vote with them, they'd rather have that vote than try and win that Senate seat with a Democrat and have the progressive vote split and go to a Republican senator from Vermont.
Okay. All right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, that seems like the bargain they've made because they haven't run a serious Democrat to get him out of there. And, a vote is a vote and whatever. He doesn't cause too much trouble in the Senate, I guess, is their angle.
True.
When he runs for president, he causes trouble.
He doesn't cause much trouble. This is an aside, but he doesn't cause much trouble as far as imperialist warmonger tendencies. He doesn't provide much drag on that boat.
No, unfortunately, no, not. But, with Bernie, you had a very unique opportunity because he decided to run in 2016 when there was no crowded field. You had an opportunity to run an underdog populist campaign against a very unpopular but very powerful frontrunner. So it was this David and Goliath thing. He got a lot of appeal that way. It's tough to say whether he would have caught on in the same way had he run in a race that is more typical. I mean, this time the Democrats flooded the field with 25 candidates, but it's typical you'll have about a dozen.
Well, that's the only.
2016.
That was only in reaction against Bernie. Typical before,
right.
When it was the Queen. When the pre-coronated queen was running against Bernie, they told Elizabeth to stay out, and she obeyed them. Sure. And they told Joe to stay out, and he obeyed them.
Sure, right. I mean, so these two cases were not typical cases. That's my point. Is that Bernie had a very unique set of circumstances under which he ran this time and the first time. Right. And so, there were a lot of these, sort of blue collar, grubby populists who were not going to vote for her. They and they responded to his message. But the point is he had a certain in as an insurgent candidate that opportunity is not going to come up again. I mean, it's very rare that people who hate the party and people who the party hates back actually get as close as Bernie has come to the nomination now twice in a row. And so going forward, I agree with the point of the article, which is that you definitely don't want to concede that, electoral politics is this bourgeois thing that we don't have to, be active in. No, we do have to be active there. But the model moving forward, is more the Kshama Sawant model. You find districts and cities and towns like Seattle, that are going to be responsive to that message, and you see what she could do. I mean, that was the most expensive race in Seattle history that Amazon, the richest company on earth, spent against her, and she won. And so, and I think that is the model going forward. And, the Socialist Alternative Party is its own party.
Let's go, if you don't mind, let's go back to Nick Brana for a bit, because he kind of came out with this anarchist approach. I'll read a little bit from the article. One of the most prominent pieces on harm reduction approach to elections was a 2016 Truth Out article. Oh, I wanted to say how much I loved Megan Day. I think Megan Day should run for president. I forgot to say that. Oh, she's
great, yeah.
Yeah, from Jacobin. Anyway, so Truth Out is generally good too. But this article was, I'm an anarchist and I vote. And this is where the idea, probably the most prominent proponent of this idea, came to power in typical leftist thinking, especially anarchists like Noam Chomsky would say, okay, voting doesn't matter. And the only reason I'd vote because I'm not a dummy. God, I hate that part. But that's what there's another article, a Jezebel writer, Esther Wong, who said that she doesn't do anything except harm reduction in her electoral politics because it just doesn't matter. I'm not a dummy who thinks electoral politics is anything but harm reduction, which flies in the face of the argument that Kshama Sawant is only harm reduction, because why would Jeff Bezos spend $1 million to beat her if there is no point to electoral politics? And so that's what I wanted to come back to, that the anarchists, the ultra leftists supposedly are telling us to vote for a fucking corporatist. And they have been. Noam Chomsky, they trot him out every 4 years and they don't talk about anything else he says. That, you know, most of the things he says are beyond the pale for mainstream media, but the mainstream media people will talk to him every 4 years when he says, yeah, you got to vote for the corporatist.
Right.
And that's, as we've seen with President Obama and President Clinton, that's not harm reduction, that's harm creation.
Right. Yeah, right. No, I mean, I think that's true. And I think that it's you're basically, I don't know if it's a defense mechanism, you know, they don't want to get involved in these electoral campaigns and, you know, suffer the disappointment of losing. Maybe they're just, you know, as a defense against that, they throw their hands up and say, well, voting is just harm reduction anyway. And so, you know, of course, these candidates always suck. And so we just have to vote to do the least harm. Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, I think that's a silly, defeatist,
cowardly
to take. And it is cowardly because you're not willing to actually go and fight a good fight that you might win. I mean, you're probably going to lose. It's extremely frustrating. I get that. It sucks losing. I'm a very competitive person. I got kicked out of my 4th birthday party because I lost a pin the tail on the donkey game. And I wanted my dad to let me go again since it was my birthday. I thought I should have 2 chances, but he said, no, you had the first chance. That's the privilege that comes with being a birthday boy. You got to go to the back of the line. And I got angry about it, and I had to go and spend time in my room as a timeout at my own birthday party. So I'm a very competitive person. I hate losing. I fucking hate losing. And I get that people hate losing. But you know what? Like, most good fights are losing fights. You win once in a while. That's the way this system is built. And to say that because we are going to lose more often than we're going to win, that we ought to just, you know, take this cowardly stance that, oh, yeah, this is bougie anyway and that this is irrelevant. No, it's not irrelevant. Now, there are certain times when elections become less relevant, such as this one, right? Not to say it's totally irrelevant, but certainly much less relevant than it would have been.
But doing what they say, harm reduction, that's not what they're doing. They're increasing harm because they're moving the window. We got to slap these people.
You're ceding that space to right-wing candidates in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party.
People like Bill Maher and people like Vosh the sheepdog. Do you have anything to say if anyone tweets this episode to Vosh the sheepdog? Do you have anything to tell him or Bill Maher or you know, all the myriad people supposedly on the left telling us to vote for corporatists?
Well, we addressed Bill Maher on our last show. I don't know if you listened to the whole thing yet, and we clipped that segment for YouTube. So, yeah, I mean, look, you know, it's so old at this point. I mean, what could you even say to it? You know, the thing about Bill Maher is that he was cool until cool people stopped watching HBO. I mean, that's really my theory about Bill Maher. You know, back when HBO was cool, because HBO was cool at one time, because there was no YouTube, right? There were no podcasts. You know, all the kids were not on the internet getting their news from all these alternative sources. Like a 10 o'clock show on HBO was kind of this cool thing. And he was much cooler back then. And there was no doubt, I have no doubt in my mind, I can't prove this, but this is one of the things. He did a segment on his show, which is, I don't know it for a fact, but I know it's true. Meaning I can't prove it, but I basically know it. I could tell you, he was sat down by his bosses at HBO, because when he gave a soft, very tacit, very insufficient endorsement of Bernie in 2016, and then didn't really talk much about it after he told Bernie he wanted him to win, I have no doubt that they sat him down and say, hey, listen, the 24 to 32-year-old, kids who are supporting Bernie Sanders are not home at 10 p.m. on a Friday night watching your show. They're out partying. So you have to change this. This is not going to sell with our audience. Our audience are the libs. They want Hillary. And you have to start catering to them. And he did it. I mean, I think he's a company man in that way. As for Vaush, I have less to say about Vaush. I don't really watch Vaush very much. The only reason I watched him that one time is because he was debating the progressive martial artist. I believe I'm getting his name right, the YouTube guy. So I tuned into that. I don't know what his personal story is or is not. But yeah, I mean, look, I think it's useless at best, counterproductive at worst to push people around in that way. It's not going to make a difference. I mean, nobody's going to listen. Everybody at this point is basically decided how they're going to vote, if they're going to vote at all. And it's just stupid. And you're right. I mean, this is not harm reduction. Bill Clinton was not harm reduction. Bill Clinton was, you're right, harm creation. Obama, in many ways, was harm creation. And if you want to, be in a struggle for justice, you have to acknowledge that. And you have to spend the bulk of your time criticizing that. I mean, I think you made a good point, which is like, the mainstream media has very little to say to or about Noam Chomsky unless he's, sheepdogging for the Democratic nominee, right? I mean, they don't really talk any substance. I mean, Noam Chomsky made his name by writing a book about what liars they are. And that was way, way, way ahead of its time, and so, yeah, I mean, I think you're generally right.
Okay. Well,
I'm sorry I don't have a catchier line for Vosh, right. But I just don't watch him enough.
Let me read you.
His hair is girlier than ours. That's what I'll say.
Girlier. Okay, so on the comments below,
much girlier than yours.
Well, mine actually is quite curly. If it ever the parts that grow, but
I said no. I didn't say curly. I said girly.
Girly. Oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We're very masculine looking.
Yeah,
we have very masculine looking hairdos here.
Yeah, quite. So on the YouTube channel where we had our first and second discussions, we've got some people saying, let me get the right one here. I've got, Chris Hedges doesn't believe in a solution within the DNC. Chris, we haven't brought him up, but he's a good person to bring up against Noam Chomsky. And I talked about Nick Brana just for a second, because he seems to go more with Noam than with Chris. And so I've got people on my mentions in the YouTube channel that have a real hard time with this, with not going with Noam instead of Chris. And you have them on your Facebook feed, and whatever Twitter, whatever social media you're on, you've still got and you call them libs, neolibs, libs, whatever. And even if they love Bernie, they're still plugged into the matrix. They're still the enemy. And we still have to think. Now, you and I, we haven't generated any heat here in this discussion, hopefully just light. But there's a lot of heat in our discussions with other people. And we have to give, I think, the listeners and viewers of our shows something to say to people like this. So I'm reading a quote. If I recall correctly, Chris Hedges says Biden could be worse, but he also says that Trump-Pence do pose certain unique threats. So he's trying to go down the same path as the corporate media want him to go down. And I said, don't vote for evil. Don't try to rationalize your own evil if you end up voting for Biden. Voting for evil makes you evil. Voting for Biden means you are willing to sacrifice the poor on the altar of corporate greed. Again, and I'm coming right out against it. And there are many, many such comments. People trying to waffle back towards voting for Biden under any circumstances. And You earlier, this is what got me to think about you for this show, said, well, it just doesn't matter, let's just leave them alone. And so I've called them scabs. I've come right out and just tried to nail them to the wall, say, not only to get them to leave us alone and stop vote shaming us, but to make them feel horrendous guilt for voting for neoliberals. I don't know. You and I don't seem to completely agree on that. That maybe we should just leave them alone and give up. But I still think that we not only should defend ourselves, but we should take the fight right back to them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we feel exactly the same way on it, but when we talked after Rick Snyder's endorsement, I was
there you go,
much more compelled to sympathize with your first argument on this. Yeah, look, I mean, at a certain point, it does become a question of solidarity with these underserved areas. I just posted, there was a tweet, I forget who put it up, that, for all the people who say how privileged the non-voters are, all of the data shows exactly the opposite. And I think her name was Rebecca Bitten. I hope I'm getting that right. But anyway, she said, have you ever canvassed in South Philadelphia? Have you ever canvassed in Detroit? Have you ever canvassed in places like Flint? Because she has, and I have. And going out and canvassing, I mean, this was years and years ago. This is when I was an Obama bro, or whatever the hell they call this, an Obama boy. Going out into South Philly, even in Newburgh, New York, which I talked a little bit about on the last time we talked, a very, very poor town full of, black and brown people and poor whites, a third, basically. The response that we would get more often than anything, even then, this was Obama. This was the first black president who was on the ballot. The response we would get more often than anything else is that they don't care because no politicians care about them. And so it's completely untrue, this idea that non-voters are generally people of privilege who can afford not to take part in the political system. So I was, frankly, kind of disappointed that there was very little. I mean, there was really no follow-up from people like Michael Moore or any of these people who made a lot of noise, as they should have, when Biden embraced the endorsement from Rick Snyder. But there was no follow-up, right? I mean, I think the next week he had, I don't know, he had what's the guy, Jacob Soboroff, the MSNBC guy, on his show, talking about how Donald Trump is a criminal, right? And it's like, look, like if you can't make these empty threats. Like you have to have the courage. Look, I understand people want Trump gone. I get that.
I get it.
I sympathize with that fully. But look, you have to say, like, you need to have courage in certain moments. This is a moment where you have to have courage. You have to say, this is unacceptable. This is absolutely unacceptable. And if you want our support, which we know they don't, but if you want our support, then you have to make certain wrongs right. And the most fundamental, the most basic of that is saying no thank you to a guy who poisoned an entire city of poor black people on purpose and then got away with it.
Okay, so let's establish then for the record that the people that are more closely aligned to people in Newburgh, New York, or Flint, Michigan, our shows are watched. Vosh's show, Bill Maher, as you were talking about, their audiences are more comfortable than most of the non-voting people. People who watch a political show are probably not non-voters. They're probably voters. They're probably more comfortable. One of my viewers keeps saying, well, I'm not comfortable, but his parents are comfortable. They've just kind of disinherited him. So he still has the attitudes of privilege. And I'd say that most all of the people who are telling us, to vote for Biden are wealthy assholes. But the people of course, yeah. The people that go along with them, the people who say, well, yeah, we really should get rid of Trump, they're not voting on behalf of poor people.
No.
They're voting on behalf of rich people when they vote for corporatists. And the DNC, as I'm going to argue in the show that comes out tomorrow, is more corrupt by far than the RNC, and they're equally corporate. You pointed out earlier the RNC is corporate too, but corruption, the DNC almost owns it. It's just totally filthily corrupt, and so privilege.
Well, look, if the RNC were as corrupt as an institution, they would have found a way to stop Trump in 2016, the way the Democrats stopped Bernie.
Exactly.
Right.
So
they didn't like it, but they said, look, this is the way people are voting. What are we going to do? The Democrats don't take voters as the final answer. They're like, well, fuck that. We don't want it. We don't want it this way. We're going to do what we want.
So the point is, what do we say to the comfy, privileged viewers and listeners? What do we say to the mainstream media audiences that when every time they say, well, you must be privileged if you think Trump is if you think Biden is worse than Trump, you must be privileged.
Yeah, no. But the thing is, I do think about them more than I wish I did. But they're not part of the team anyway, right? I mean, so what do we say to them?
They think they are.
Fuck off. But they're not. That's the thing. We have to treat that. They may as well be Republicans for all.
Okay. All right. Now, this is the crux then. And Nick Brana wants to keep them all in the fold. Noam Chomsky wants to keep them all in the fold. Bill Maher, and Michael Moore.
Bill Maher is basically one of them.
Yeah, well,
Michael Moore is one of them.
Michael Moore then. Michael Moore wants to keep them in the fold. They want to build a big enough coalition so their team wins. It's tribalism, I'd say. So what do you tell these tribalistic, comfy suburbanites when they call you privileged? They want to be. They call themselves leftists.
You're wrong.
They say they like Bernie.
You're wrong.
They say, don't blame me. I voted for Bernie in the primaries.
Right.
You're still fucking assholes. You got to come to grips with this. You can't look, and this includes some of the people who watch my show. No, you're assholes if you're still arguing any way, shape, or form to vote for corporatists. And you're not an anarchist. I don't care what you say. You're not a leftist of any kind if you're urging anyone else or telling anyone else that you're going to vote for Biden.
Well, when you say telling anyone else or urging it, I mean, look, I see where you're coming from with this, because we're talking about, as pundits, as people with audiences, I get annoyed too when people give the old thing, like even Ryan Knight, who's with MPP, he tweeted out that he went on some radio show, and that when the issue of voting came up, he announced that because he lives in California that he's voting for Hawkins, but that if he lived in Ohio, where the show was broadcast, he would be voting for Biden. And here's the thing, like, I do think that it's just like, I don't know. I think it's bad form to do. Like, just shut up about it already. Like, we don't need to hear this from everybody, who comes on about, I live in this state, but if I lived in that state, I would do it. It's like, look, people are going to decide how they want to decide. I'm not of the opinion that anybody who votes for Biden is, by definition, an asshole. I think it is in itself, and I said this on my show, it is an immoral thing.
To vote for Biden, you're a scab.
Yes.
You're not showing solidarity.
Is in itself, yes, that's an immoral act, because especially now after that whole fucking Michigan governor thing. But I think that the way people must atone for that is they must get in the streets and they must cause hell.
Well,
right? And I still think that's a remedy.
All right.
I'm not willing to say that if you vote for Biden now, look, the people who push other people around, you're privileged, you're this, you're that, fuck them. But they're so brainwashed, they're never going to be on the team.
But they think they are, and the MPP insiders don't even like the Green Party. The people you're talking about, the MP Nick Brana people, they are discouraging people from voting for the Green Party. That's not on the team at all, but they think they're all on the team. Have they discouraged people
from voting Green? I mean, they had Chris Hedges on their convention who said, "I'm voting for Green. I encourage you all to vote Green."
Ask
Tim Black
Nick
said he's voting Green.
Ask Nick Brana. Ask the central core leaders of the MPP. and they'll go more with Cornel West than with Chris Hedges.
All right. I mean, I can't.
We got to call this shit out. We can't pretend.
I have not heard anything about that. I mean, what I would say is that their position was a good one. And as for their convention, I thought it was a great convention, but I think that for an organization that made a wise call to stay out of 2020 punditry, there was a whole lot of 2020 punditry at that convention. You had people on there saying they're going to vote for Biden, then you had people on there saying they're going to vote Green, right? And so
that's not acceptable. That's what I keep coming back to. We have to call a spade a spade. We have to stop pretending that you're on the team. We have to stop coddling our own viewers and listeners, and we have to stop coddling the comfy suburbanites who think they can love Bernie and still vote for Biden. And we have to let them know,
okay.
No, you're doing something immoral, you're doing something wrong. So mostly what the pundits are saying is, I don't want to offend my audience, and so I'm not going to tell anyone how to vote. No, fuck that shit. Well, tell your audience not to vote for Biden, or you've got to face yourself in the mirror. I would like to see the tax returns of the people. I would like to see what they're getting under the table. I want to see the income sources of people who tell us to vote for fucking Biden.
Sure. I mean, look, if you've listened to our show, we don't really fear offending our audience. It's not.
I know. I've listened. Yeah, I know.
Not a major.
You ridicule your audience.
Yeah, we basically believe, right. We batter our audience. Yeah. We are abusive to our audience.
Yes.
But my stance against the reason why I am hesitant to take a position on it is not because I'm afraid to offend the audience. It's because, as I've mentioned to you before, I can't articulate a vision of the future one way or the other that says what is going to produce a better outcome. I don't know. It seems like a very hopeless situation either way, quite frankly.
But look at Kshama.
And that's why I'm not advising people either way. Now, what I will say
is that, Kshama.
Yes, I'm sorry?
Look at Kshama.
Sure, but
it matters.
But that's not right. But this is why I said this goes back to the first comment I made. The Sanders campaign was very unique in that it was an insurgent campaign within a party that hated him. Now, should we have just run a Kshama type candidate from the get-go? Said, fuck this Bernie thing. Either he runs as an independent because they're never going to let him win within the party, or we'll find somebody else to run as a third party. Then I think you'd have, once again, this goes back to other conversations we've had where there's really nobody to vote for. If we had a campaign that we've been building for 2 years and we had a candidate on the ballot, right, who we were really serious about, then I would, absolutely. Then we would say,
okay, so then it comes down to George.
But that's not the situation we're in. If we had a Kshama Sawant on the ballot right now, obviously I'd say no. Kshama Sawant.
But, okay, go to George Carlin then. He says it's more moral not to vote than to vote for evil. And he's right.
Because
you're endorsing.
I think that is right, but I think the question becomes then, if you do this thing right, and once again, the people who are going to vote for Biden and go to brunch, they're not on the team. I'm not talking to them anyway, right? I mean, some of them listen to my show, and we browbeat them every episode. I don't know why they keep listening, but maybe they hate listen. I don't know, but they're not on the team anyway. But look, if you understand the seriousness of what is at stake here, then whatever. In the privacy of a voting booth, I don't really care what you do. Even if I don't know what you do, it doesn't matter. You shouldn't be pushing other people around, telling them how to vote, and that's it. I mean, if you could vote, like I said, however you want. It doesn't matter to me, as long as you're not pushing other people around and giving them this bullshit about how they're privileged if they don't do it, or whatever. Now, this is because we don't have a Kshama Sawant type candidate. We did not do the work that the Socialist Alternative Party did in actually building a new brand, a new party, and running it against this two-party system in a very aggressive, unapologetic way. We tried to sneak in the back door. right? That's what the Bernie campaign was. We saw a weakness in the system. We saw a tiny chink in the armor in this Democratic Party. We said we could get in here. And because that failed, we have no other option right now. And that's the danger of a Bernie Sanders type campaign. And that's what there was another article that you mentioned in the same episode. I believe it was yesterday. Somebody writing for, I believe it was Black Agenda Report, said, yeah, this is what happens when the Democrats have a supposedly, left candidate. They fail and they sheepdog the leftists into the party, preventing them from doing the kind of work that the Socialist Alternative Party did in Seattle, right? If there were no Bernies, and he, like I said, is unique, but if there were no Howard Deans, if there were no Dennis Kuciniches,
Jesse Jackson,
if there were no Jesse Jacksons, then we wouldn't be trying to knock down the door of the Democratic Party 2 years before the general election. We would be building alternative parties and alternative left power bases like the Socialist Alternative Party or the Green Party or MPP. And if we had done that, then we'd have something. But we didn't do that. And now whoever wrote that piece would say that we got suckered. We had, we're just the latest, Rainbow Coalition, or we're the Dean people, whatever they call them. He may be right. Hey, look, he's got a better claim to being right than we do at this point, right? I mean, We have more egg on our face than he does. And so that's the situation we're in. That's what losing tastes like. Losing tastes like shit. And, right now, there's no good option. And if there's no good option, I can't tell people how to vote in either way. There was a poll that had Hawkins at 3% that came out recently. That's pretty good. I mean, if he has a chance to get to 5, I'll vote for Hawkins. But beyond that, I really don't know. I have a question for you before we wrap, because we talked a little bit about this in the episode that we did. But I think that the Supreme Court issue now, with a 6-3 conservative majority pending, I think there's going to be tremendous pressure on a potential Biden presidency to pack the court. And the interesting opportunity that this poses is that you will not only further radicalize leftists, but this could be an issue that radicalizes some of the libs, because these are issues that they really, really care about, as they should, right? Women's rights, gay rights, all this stuff. But these are right in the wheelhouse, Women's March, right? I mean, mainstream blue no matter who issues. Resistance. And if they see that President Joe Biden is not willing to pack that court, if they win this race and they win the Senate and they still have the House, and they see that they're not willing to pack the court, because I do not think Joe Biden is going to pack that court.
Nope.
And that is an opportunity to radicalize some of these liberals and cause the kind of wake-ups that we've seen. Ryan Knight was pretty much a mainstream liberal.
Well, then you have to
recently.
Okay.
So was forgetting their name. Oh, well, what's his name? Dow.
Peter.
Peter. Yeah. You might have millions more of those guys if they see that. Wait a minute.
Okay,
Roe v. Wade is on the chopping block. Gay marriage is on the chopping block. You guys have the power to fix this, and you're not fixing it. I think that's a pretty unique opportunity.
Okay, I think I understand the question. So I see the it's a catch-22, but I see that you're trying to radicalize people who are comfortable. And, I'm
not trying to.
Well, you're saying that if Biden gets in,
this is a possibility.
If Biden gets in, that it might radicalize.
It might.
People.
Yeah, it might.
So, would that be a reason to vote for an evil person? Because if Trump stays in, if you added up all the people who are not yet radical but who need to be, would you radicalize a greater number of people with Trump or with Biden?
No.
I'd say, if you have Trump in there, you're going to radicalize more people than if you have Biden in there.
I don't think so, man. I think we've run this experiment already. We had Trump for 4 years, and the Democrats nominated someone to the right of Hillary.
But the people.
I mean,
the people.
Right, but the people voted for Biden. I wish they didn't, but they did. Enough of them did. The people, look.
What did they do with Obama? What did they do with Clinton?
Right. No.
They're not radical there either. So we've run this experiment, and we say it doesn't make any fucking difference.
Well, it maybe not, but they didn't have. I mean, Roe v. Wade wasn't underturned under Obama. If they overturn Roe v. Wade and Joe Biden has the opportunity to put 10 justices, if I were president now, if I got elected president, day one, in my fucking inauguration speech, I said, oh, by the way, before I give you the old God Bless America line, I'm nominating 10 Supreme Court justices today.
Yeah.
10. That's right. We're going to have a 19-person court.
Yeah.
It's going to be a 13-6 left majority on that court. Fuck off.
Yeah.
Our compromise, our olive branch is we'll buy more beaters so the Brett Kavanaugh doesn't run out. That would be my thing.
Mr. President, let me ask you something then. Are you...
And if I had the Senate and if I had the House, we could get 10 if they had the balls to do it.
Are you saying then that the Supreme Court should continue to be as important as it is and make all the important decisions that the Congress fluffs off onto them? Or would you, as a leftist president, try to get the responsibility back over to Congress where it belongs instead of having them push all the biggest decisions and most important decisions to the court? So they don't have to deal with it.
You basically are delegitimizing the court. You're basically making the court what it essentially is now, which is an extension of the executive and legislative branches. And that's all it is now, because the president appoints the justices, the Senate confirms them. It's a partisan process right now.
You could put pressure on the cowards in Congress. You could put pressure to make sure all the people there already, and not just the new people you'd try to drag in, that they would not shirk and that they would not foist all of the big response, because the big issue is they have term limits. They have term limits, so they can't stay forever like the Supreme Court, and that's why it happened. So you'd have to say, even though you're only here for a short time, you're going to have to take responsibility and not push everything over onto the court because they don't get reelected and you do.
Oh, sure. I mean, I'm for look. I would look. I read a very good case for just doing away with the court. That's it, because it doesn't have any real legitimacy now as it was intended to have in the founding of the country. This is supposed to be a separate apolitical branch of government that checks the other two, and the check that the other two have on the court is that they can impeach certain Supreme Court justices if they have to, right? If something happens that they would have to, but that's not the way it functions now. It's a very partisan court now, and by packing it, we would just make it overtly so, right? We would just be saying, all right, mask is off. We're not going to play this bullshit where we could say it's only 9 people and we only fill a seat when someone dies or when someone resigns, right? We will just pack it. And look, I think if abortions are made illegal in half of the states in the U.S., and they have a Democratic president and a Democratic Senate and a Democratic House, and they don't do anything to fix it, and I don't think that they will.
They won't.
That will radicalize. That will absolutely, I give you my word, radicalize millions more people than if Donald Trump is reelected, and these liberals can just hide behind Chuck Schumer. They hide behind Nancy Pelosi. They say this is the resistance, right? Because they're protecting us from Trump, even though they're not, and we know they're not in any serious way. And so, but look,
I'll believe it when I see it. Then
look, I'm just saying, look, that's only one factor in a million factors. It's I thought I would bring it up because it's in the recent news, right? But there are a million things that could go either way. I don't know, man. It's a horrible, horrible situation. But I think the point of the article that at least what I took from the article is that the way to actually do electoral politics is to do it the way Socialist Alternative has done it, and find places you can win and build campaigns that last 2 years, do them on your own terms, get ballot access, and give it your best shot, because trying to infiltrate a party that could just slam the door in your face because they have the power to do so is a dead end. Then you're stuck having the kinds of conversations that we're having. Who wants to be having this conversation, right? We'd either want Bernie on the ballot or we'd want to have someone like Kshama Sawant, right?
And in the
we
times
could just vote for in November and build a brand for him, build a name for. Just tell everybody, go vote for our candidate. We would like to have a candidate on the ballot. Now we don't. Yeah. Because we did it this weird way that, like I said, there was a unique. I don't regret trying as hard as I could to get Bernie in. But looking back on it,
We're
you can
chumps.
see there were a lot of systemic pitfalls that we just kind of wish weren't there.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's probably a wrap then. You said you had 40 minutes, and we're 46 minutes in.
Yeah, that's
so.
about. Yeah, I guess so.
All right. We'll get
All right,
this
thanks,
up there
man.
for people. Thank you, Keaton. See you next time.
And I don't know if people are going to be watching this today or after the debates, but whatever. We'll see. This is recorded before the debates, so we're not ignoring any revelations that might happen in about, I don't know, 10 hours now as we're watching this. Who knows? This could all be moot. Biden could just totally malfunction on stage, at which point, he would hand the thing to Trump anyway.
Okay. Well, we'll catch you next time. Have a good day.
All right. Thank you, Alan.
Best.
Always a pleasure.